Reviewing today The Adventures of Tintin, the Seven Crystal Balls. Now, for anyone who's been following along with me, I have so far been trying to do these Tintin books in order, but I'm getting them out of my school library, and these three books were not available. These two books appear to have gone missing. This book, somebody else checked it out, and I guess somebody else is reading these Tintin books. So I did jump three books over to the Seven Crystal Ball, and it's very apparent that there are some events in here that I am missing. For example, Captain Haddock, the miserable sea dog, has somehow come into money. This must have happened in one of the previous books. He's got a servant. He lives in a mansion. He has monocles with him. And one of the jokes is that he keeps breaking his monocles. There's also another character here, Professor Calculus, who has joined the cast of characters here with Tintin. And all of this must have happened in the three comics I missed. Well, this is the way it goes, isn't it? I mean, I was doing my best to read them in order, but more often than not, this is the way you usually read comic books, right? You try and read them in order, but unless you're a collector who would buy all of these off of Amazon before you even read one of them, if this is your first exposure, you usually read them out of order. So hopefully the library will replace these two missing books, and I'll get around to this book as soon as somebody else returns it. But yeah, for the moment, just doing these out of order. This is actually, I don't know if anyone remembers, in the very first Tintin book I made, this is the book I originally started out with, before realizing that there were too many nods to continuity I wasn't aware of. There's, in addition to all the things I just mentioned, Tintin's old friend, General Alcazar, who it's clearly set up in here as somebody Tintin knows from a previous adventure. That was from Tintin and the Broken Ear, which I did read. And then as well, there's the opera singer. Yep. Tintin says, "She seems to follow us around. I know she's indefatigable. Here she comes." So that opera singer first showed up in King Uptakar's Scepter, I believe. I think that's right. Or was it the crab with the golden claw? I don't remember. But she appeared in a previous book. And in one of these books, or in all of them, she met Captain Haddock, I guess. So yeah, anyways. Um, so I've missed three books in between, and in addition to just being three books, there's a number of years in between. I think this one was published in the early 40s. This one is all the way in the late 40s for reasons I'll get to in just a moment. There's a significant backstory behind this book. But jumping in with this book, the pacing in storytelling is completely different than the other Tintin books I've been reading, in a very good way. Like, this book is taking its time to very slowly set up the story, and in a way that's quite refreshing after the previous Tintin books. So Tintin goes and meets Captain Haddock, who's obsessed about some magic show he saw where they turned water into whiskey. He gets Tintin to go with him. They sit through a bunch of other acts, in which they watch the act, and Professor Haddock is commenting on it. They go backstage to see their old friend General Alcazar. While they're going backstage, they get lost, and Captain Haddock stumbles up onto stage. And we're all, we're about 16, 17, 18 pages in before the plot really at all begins to kick in. Although a couple of these things that got set up earlier on will come back to play later on, so it wasn't a complete waste of time, but it was very definitely the long way around. Now, in the previous Tintin books, because they had been serialized in newspapers, they were very slapstick and very breakneck speed. Like every couple pages would have Tintin be captured and then Tintin escape, and then Tintin gets captured and then Tintin escapes. And that happened every couple pages, and I'm assuming that's because it was serialized. So I'm reading this adventure and the pacing is completely different. And I'm thinking, okay, there must have been some change in the publication. He's no longer being serialized in the newspapers. Now maybe he's writing for comic books. Because comic books were a thing by the 1940s, huh? Now, I resisted the temptation to look on Wikipedia until after I finished this. But then after I finished this, I looked at Wikipedia to see what the publication history of this was. And oh boy, is there a story about the publication history. So, during this time, the Nazis were occupying Belgium, and the Nazis were controlling all the newspapers. The author, whose name I believe is pronounced Herge, was invited to come back to work at one of the major newspapers with a readership greater than he ever had before, but it was under control of the Nazis. Now, this story is completely apolitical, or at least it was intended to be. It's political in the way it would be considered political nowadays, in the sense that it's drawing off of some racist stereotypes of Latin America, arguably racist stereotypes of Latin America. At the very least, stereotypes of Latin America. Maybe racist is a bit of a charged word. Anyways, at the time it was considered apolitical. Certainly it had nothing to do with the war in Europe. But when the war was over and the Belgium resistance, when the Nazis were defeated and the Belgium resistance regained control of Belgium, then Herge was actually arrested as a Nazi collaborator because he had been working on a newspaper controlled by the Nazis. And there was this whole big thing, and it's all on Wikipedia, about how he was arrested and charged, and his friends were sentenced to jail and stuff like that. And I'm not really going to get into it. Number one, because it's all on Wikipedia. Number two, because I'm not an expert. Well, mainly number two. I think anytime you read anything about Tintin or any biography of the author Herge, that controversy about whether or not he was collaborating with the Nazis comes up. And it is a controversy, and I do not know enough to weigh in about it. But apparently, publication ended after this scene right here, and then did not pick up again until several years because Herge was banned from working with newspapers because of his supposed collaboration with the Nazis. I think that's the reason why the story didn't get finished until 1948, even though it started during during the World War II years. Right. So, what is there to say about this story? Uh, it's uh, it's a mummy's curse story, except it's not really the mummy. It's a Peruvian mummy. But right at the beginning, a character is comparing it to what happened with the curse of Tutankhamen. So then the like I said before, there's a very slow setup here, um, and the change of pace is refreshing. It's nice to see the plot slowly develop instead of being so slapdash as it had been previously. But we discovered that one by one, the people who had discovered the ancient mummy's tomb in Peru are being poisoned and put into some sort of coma. And Tintin and his police detective friends know it's happening, but they can't seem to protect them, or they try and get to them too late. There's one left, and they're at his house, and it's a dark and rainy night. And then, and then weird stuff really begins to happen. Now, what's going on here? Is this genuinely the supernatural, or is this, is this like Scooby Doo, where we're gonna find out? Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've had ghosts or like genuine supernatural elements in Tintin yet, at least not in the stories I've read. But maybe, so maybe there will be an explanation for this, but it definitely looks like ghosts and supernatural stuff. But we don't actually get a conclusion here, because it ends on a cliffhanger. And then the story is, I guess, continued in the next one, Tintin Prisoners of the Sun, which hopefully has not been checked out of the library yet. So I'll have to go and check that one out. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. I found it a refreshing change of pace from the previous one. I liked the slow burn of the mystery. Captain, I was reading on Wikipedia. The critics were saying that this is where Captain Haddock becomes Tintin's sidekick instead of just the pathetic drunk he'd apparently been up to this point. Like I said, I've missed several of them. On the other hand, Snowy, who had previously been Tintin's sidekick, is reduced to just being a dog. So he's, I guess, whoa, whoa must be bark, bark in French. I don't know. But, in previous Tintin comics, Snowy was able to talk to Tintin. He's still able to talk a little bit, and I guess we're continuing the gag of Snowy really liking alcohol. But this is really noticeable at the end, where Snowy is trying to get Tintin to notice that the hat belongs to Professor Calculus, who's gone missing, and he does not have the power of speech here at all, which he had in previous comics. So he just is able to have to try and use other methods to get Tintin to. It's like those old Lassie TV shows. Just by being persistent and keep bringing the hat back to Tintin and barking, he's able to get the message across. So, yeah, I think that's really all I have to say about this one. It'll be interesting to go back later and find out what the tone of these 3 books was like, because I'm jumping ahead 3 books, and I think skipping ahead like 7 years. 7 years because of the delay in publication because Herge was arrested for being a Nazi collaborator. Um, but yeah, this one seems very much improved, very much more mature than the previous Tintin comics I've been reading. So makes me hopeful that the rest of the books in this series will hopefully also be as delightful to read. All right, I'll finish out here.